Isn't that exciting? Well, we're going to have a chance to give into it this right away. So we don't have to start. There's no delay before we can start acting on what God is speaking to us about doing. We're just going to take a few minutes. It's the last thing we'll do this morning before transitioning to the picnic, is that we are going to take up an offering for One Church Ministries. This is something we usually do once a year at the OCM conference or something like that, in which you have an opportunity to give into OCM. Just to be clear, this is not a Living Light offering. So if anyone came prepared to give their normal tithes and offerings into Living Light, that won't be this offering. We're not taking that today. You can just save that for next week. So this is going entirely into One Church Ministries. Let me just read a scripture. It's one you know really well, but I just want to read it to you before we actually go through where the money goes as you give. It says this in 2 Corinthians 9. This is Paul, who is looking to the church in Corinth to provide a gift to be involved in his apostolic ministry and what he's doing in other places. And it says this: the point is this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. As it is written, he has distributed freely, he has given to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way, so that through us, there will produce thanksgiving to God. For the ministry of this service is not only supplying the needs of the saints, but is also overflowing in many thanksgiving to God. By their approval of this service, they will glorify God because of your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ and the generosity of your contribution for them and for all others. While they long for you and pray for you because of the surpassing grace of God upon you, thanks be to God for this inexpressible gift. Not a bad thank you letter, huh? What Paul's saying here is, I just want to say a couple things about this before we start giving, is I grew up in an environment in which they took offerings a lot. I grew up in the faith movement. There'd be times they'd shut the door and say, we're not leaving this meeting until a certain amount of money's met, or, there are 10 people in this room, each going to give $1,000, then there'd be this awkward, really long period until they all do that. So I was thinking to try some of that today, see how it works, but no, totally kidding. The thing about it is, in my early years, it kind of turned me off. We don't talk a lot about money as churches, and part of that is because we want to know we're not in this for money. But the thing that was lost is, at times, as I grew up, is the joyfulness and the cheerfulness of being able to give into the purposes of God. So what this morning is about is not a pressure for you to give, but an opportunity for you to give into things that are meaningful. Jesus was really honest about money, and he said, use money to create an eternal reward. It's what he said. He used multiple parables to say, hey, you can buy this barn, you can buy this thing, you can buy that thing, and they're all going to be gone when you're gone. They're not going to matter. They don't go with you into eternity. But if you sow money into the work of God, and if you sow money into people's lives, there's a reward for you in eternity when you use money for eternal things. And so he's just being incredibly practical in his advice to us. And he's saying, listen, invest your money in what really matters in eternal ways. And when you catch that, you give joyfully. As we heard about in the scripture that was read this morning, the pearl of great price, we joyfully sell all things. And so this morning is a chance to do this. As I mentioned in my sermon, there's adjustment. You may have saved up money to do something else with it, maybe for your own house, for your own situation. I don't say this as a pressure. I say this as God may move on some of you to joyfully take money you've saved up for other things and said, church plants matter more than this. People are hearing the gospel in other places that matter more to this. And just the very thought of what Paul's writing here, Paul's saying, listen, there are people in other places worshiping God and praising him right now because you gave money. And because of that, they're born again, they're serving God, they're giving him praise, and all you did is just give money into a situation. Isn't that shockingly awesome? And so we just want to talk about that this morning and give you a chance to do that. And so to give you a place from which to give in joy, we want to show you where the money goes and what we've done with the money. So we're going to give a quick snapshot. I'm going to try to do this quickly of the last 12 months of what we've done as One Church Ministries. As John has mentioned, One Church Ministries is a ministry that is centered around John's apostolic ministry and those of us who work with him in helping to care for and serve churches. So it's different than Living Light, which are the churches themselves. And so this is what we've done with the finances that have come in over the last 12 months. This is kind of a report of what we've done. The very first thing we've done is we support Ephesians 4 ministries. So the income of OCM comes in kind of two ways. One way is all of our churches that we care for, they're all the Living Light churches, they all tithe from the tithe that they're given. So all the money that comes into Living Light, there's a tithe that's then given to OCM, to One Church Ministries. And that tithe is used to support primarily Ephesians 4 ministries. And so right now, it supports these amazing looking guys. Come on. So right now, John and myself and Ian are traveling to churches. It supports when we go places and do things. It also helps support the School of Worship in that all three of us teach into the School of Worship, but the School of Worship doesn't pay us anything. So it's one of the things that helps keep their tuition down because we would charge a lot, just to be clear, as teachers. The stuff we're getting is just gold, so... or giving, I'm saying is gold. So, but we don't draw any income from that. So it also helps in those ways to be able to keep the cost down for students and people coming into things. So it supports us in what we do in our traveling and in our ministering. And then the rest of the money that comes in supports all the rest that we do. Now, I just want to make that distinction because all the things we need to do in addition to just the support of the minimum comes from offerings like this. So we're deeply dependent on these kind of moments. The tithe would never support all the rest of the things we talk about. All the rest of that comes out of your giving in situations like this. But the next thing that we do with the money is from all the money that comes into OCM, we tithe out into Terry Virgo's ministry and the things that he is doing, the tithe of the tithe. And so we're primarily, we got a report from Terry of how he used the money that we sent in to him and to the ministry that he's a part of. I'm going to go kind of quickly through this so we can talk more in the break or something if you want more information. But Terry was able to say that one of the big needs this year has been because of coronavirus and the difficulties that's created for places economically. And so a lot of the money was able to help or was used to help churches and ministries and places and areas that have been kind of harshly affected by the virus and the world shut down in light of the virus. And so some of the places it's gone are Zimbabwe and Mozambique. In Africa, there's an apostolic guy, Scott Marquis, who works there, and that area has been devastated economically and politically, and so we've been able to sow money into those areas to meet needs. Also in Africa, in Kenya, a man named Edward Buria works in Kenya with hundreds of churches that he's raised up there, and they have massive challenges, and so some of the tithe has gone to help those churches. Also in Mumbai, India, there's an apostolic guy in there named Vinu Paul in Mumbai, and they've been devastated through the coronavirus as well, and he works with 100 churches there, and so it's gone to help support them in what's going on. Now, in addition to all of that support of existing places, it has also been used, the tithe of the tithe, to help plant a couple new churches, one in Berlin, Germany, that has been planted, and one in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And so they've planted 2 new churches in those places, as well as the training programs in the UK that are associated with Terry's work, that they continue to support those things. So that's kind of enough already, isn't it? I mean, I'm just going through that quick list, and I'm like, wow, it's amazing that we as church here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, have been impacting these global situations in other places. People that we don't even know right now, these people, these names mentioned, you don't know, they've been worshiping God because of money we've sown into those places. As John's already talked about this morning, one of the very existence, one of the main things that One Church Ministries is about the unity of the One Church of Christ in all of our communities. And so, again, from the financial resources, we continue to sow into that and to help build unity across the churches. Some of the ways we've done that is there's been a church that's been meeting at our building up until COVID. They met for free up until then. They're taking a break, I think, right now, and they'll be meeting again, I think, in the future. But up until then, they used our building, and it's the Way of Jesus Church of God, which is a primarily Indian church that's in the Church of Kenosha. So we've just let them meet in our building for all that time period, free of charge. We cover any costs related to them being in there. They don't pay anything. Also, as we've met, the leaders of what will be One Voice, right now Acts Church, Matt Myers, Lawrence Kirby, David Johnson, and the work they're doing. We've continued, or we've started to, I should say, provide practical support to them in terms of financial support, use of our building, use of equipment, building relationship and friendship with them, helping them in whatever ways that we can. So they started meeting in our building 2-3 weeks ago. Somewhere around there. Yep. So we continue to sow into that financially in other ways. The citywide worship and prayer times that John has mentioned. Again, a lot of that comes from various churches doing various things, but from our end, we're usually involved in terms of equipment, in terms of staff, in terms of people like Chris and John and Ian and the different people that are involved in that and helping to support that. We know there are going to be a lot more of these citywide things coming up, so we want to continue to sow into those situations in any way that we can. And so the money that comes in, we use, again, to support church unity. Sometimes we can think, okay, well, what can I do to help build church unity? Well, obviously, you can build relationships with other Christians, but you can sow into situations like this that create the forms and the events for unity to be able to be forged and to be able to grow closer. And it's through your gifts that we're able to do that. Fourth thing that we do with the money is our continued support of our brothers and sisters in India. India continues to be a place of great need and great harvest, and there are such tremendous opportunities to sow into situations from there. And it's just one of those occasions where you just get so much return on what you sow in, even if it's a small amount. Just because of the economic differences, just because of the greatness of the need there, guys. Honestly, I mean, I don't know if there's anywhere else that we're sowing into where there's such tremendous return on our sowing into these situations. And so some of the things we've been able to do is we've continued to support Sujith Babu, who was a School of Worship student in 2008. So He was back in Kenosha in December of 2019, filling us in on what's going on in his life. So we've sowed further finances into his ministry as he travels around India leading worship in different places. We continue, and our main support into India is through Rajib and his family, which is not a good-looking family up there. Rajib is the apostle we're joined to and working with in India. He's been here. He and his wife have spoken here. He's responsible for 53 established churches. So we're going to do 5. He's done 53 anyway. He's responsible for 53 established churches and many other pioneering works in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. So Rajib and his apostolic team head up what's called the Asian Worship and Discipleship Training, which is where he trains church leaders, which is a program to help raise up pioneering leaders that usually would have begun in September, but due to COVID was delayed to January. But we, along with the churches in Wisconsin, have supported the entire cost of this program for a couple years now. So every one of their leaders going through this program is going through it because you sow in moments like this. And we're able to pay entirely for every student to be able to go through. And then they go plant churches, again, which is just great opportunities because it's not just sowing into them, but into everyone they sow into. It's exponential in what goes on. So again, it's a great opportunity. We have the Laljis and the Thorns visited India back in February of 2020, being able to see the churches and what's going on there. And so it helps support their trip there and for people who go in order to support India. And here are just some pictures. We'll just go through the pictures here just because these are great looking people who we like to see doing things. That's Ben Thorne. This is just them as they traveled around. So again, from our finances, they were able to go, speak into churches, pray for people, support what's going on, strengthen the church there and encourage them. But as we go through these, one of these ones, the next one, I think the slide is an important one. One of the things we've been able to do is what we've been able to pay for from One Church Ministries is Tanmoy Mitra back in 2018-19 did the School of Worship. All these School of Worship students, so great. When he was here, he was so impacted by the VNC that he wanted it to get into their language. And so he worked with Rajiv to get the course translated into West Bengali and Hindi. And so OCM paid for this. And it's completely done now and is a significant part of their leadership training. All right, this next picture might be my favorite. I'll explain why in a second. So one of the areas where Rajiv works into is Odisha. Odisha? Is that how you say it? Is I say it right? Odisha? And we've talked about this before, but Odisha is one of the most persecuted places in India, certainly the most persecuted place he works into. It's the Christians there are severely persecuted by Hindu radicals. And Rajiv usually works into that with difficulty. Just by way of information, in the last several years, thousands of Christians have died in their work there, that they've been injured, in other various ones have been injured, and there have been more than 500 church buildings and 10,000 homes destroyed as they've worked into these places. But one of the blessings of COVID is since things are more shut down, they've been able to go in a little more and to be able to care for people and to be able to minister. And these 15 people got born again from that area of Odisha during this time. So isn't that great? And these next pictures will know how they were actually born again, because no one would get baptized in that water if it wasn't for Jesus. So this is pictures of them being baptized after obviously committing their life to Christ. All right, number 5 is our continued support for our brothers and sisters in Africa. All right, so our main support into Africa is for David and Veronica Fatorma, who have been here multiple times. Go Arsenal. Actually, I'm a Man United fan, so they can take those shirts off. But anyway, David is the apostle that we're joined to, and he works in West Africa. So we regularly support David in his ministry. Many of you are familiar with LEAP, which stands for Leadership Education for Africa program. Some of you support that personally. We support it as a church, but it helps to support the work that they're doing there. David has planted 6 churches in Liberia and is in the process of planting one in Sierra Leone. He also oversees a school there called Light Stream Academy. And so a lot of our money goes to support the students who are going through that school, which I think we have pictures of there. That school has over 350 students in grades K through 8. And so, again, we help to support them in their education. So Living Light Churches in the UK have sponsored also a new agricultural project in Moravia, which is 75 acres of farmland. It looks better than that now. Just to say, apparently they've even started to get a harvest from it. So we just didn't have an updated picture. But one of the things we've wanted to do in working with David is to find ways in which they can sustain themselves as a community and not be dependent upon outside support. And so the development of this farmland not only provides them with food, but also provides them possibly with revenue as they can sell it and do things like that. So we've been part of that process. And so there's a team from UK actually that's planning a trip next year to survey the land, the things that they're doing, and help visit the churches that David cares for as well. So our money also is part of that. Sorry, I got to catch up here. All right, number 6, the development of video and written material to train and equip globally. This is an emerging area for us, obviously catching up with the digital age, but we have been investing in equipment and things that will help us to communicate digitally, because there's such tremendous opportunities with the digital world these days. One of which, as many of you know, is the VNC Video Series, which went live in January of 2020. Finally done, yes. which is just so helpful in so many ways, because then anywhere where you can get an internet connection anywhere around the world for free, people can watch the course. They can be trained in these things. It can help with church planting situations. Even this year for the School of Worship, at least for the first 8 sessions, I think, they were able to watch them all online, and then we can just come together and talk about them. So it's a tremendous resource in what we're doing. Also, it helped us to develop Living Light Online. So when Corona hit, we were more ready than we realized we would be, because we'd already started investing in these things. So we had the capability to very quickly and easily transition to online worship and teaching, which we did from April through May. So all of our churches could benefit from that. All that equipment is owned by OCM, bought from offerings like this to be able to produce those things. So all the worship that came through there, and that continues to happen through live streaming that we do. Again, all the equipment is equipment that came from moments like this to be able to sow the word out there. Finally, we also continue and will continue to support pioneering initiatives. We are excited, as John talked about, for the 5 couples and families that moved here from Minnesota to Racine. We were able to help them with some finances in their relocation costs to be able to move here, to be a part of the Racine church. And obviously there's going to be all kinds of costs associated with planting 5 churches in 5 years. And maybe fortunately, maybe unfortunately, but doing all the things we do pretty much takes money. And so in everything that we're talking about this morning, we're going to need tremendous amounts of money to come in and resource to come in to be able to sow out into all these places and do the things that God has called us to do. So we'll continue to do that. We were also able to purchase a van through OCM that's basically used for various things, but at the moment it's been used by Trey in his evangelistic initiatives as he's driving around leading evangelism teams and the things that he's doing. Again, enabling him or helping enable him to do what he's called to do. I just want to list a few things that have happened by Trey's involvement, and again, not that he personally has done all these things, but that by his involvement, all these things have taken place over the past year, I think it is. There have been 117 people who have made decisions for Christ through the evangelism, praying prayers and doing things. There's been established a 26-person evangelism team that's working both in Racine and in Kenosha, going out sharing the gospel, which you can be a part of. There's evangelistic training that he's doing with the School of Worship on the discipleship track and taking them out to do evangelism. 1,300 people have heard the gospel through what he's been doing in various ways. 17 people have been healed. Every week they spend 6 hours just praying for the lost and for evangelism and for these things and for revival. And also the all-day prayer and initiative, fasting initiative that we just had recently, that came primarily through Trey and his initiative with the evangelism teams. So again, sowing into what he's doing is something we're able to do as OCM, which is a pretty great thing to do, isn't it? So I think it's pretty easy to give cheerfully into this, isn't it? I mean, it's just amazing, all of these things that are going on, able to do so much. So I do want you to consider it, what God wants you to give. As Paul says in the statement, again, this statement primarily not about your local tithe and offering. This is, when he makes that statement in Corinthians, everyone reads it, every pastor reads it, but it was actually about sowing into apostolic ministry. And in fact, in Philippians, when it says, my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory, that promise was about apostolic ministry. Again, it was sowing into what Paul was doing. But in the passage we read, Paul said this, I want you to give what you've determined in your heart cheerfully. And so I want you to just take a moment, whether that's right now or whether you need to do it this week if you don't feel prepared to give, but not just to give kind of whatever pops up, but to prayerfully consider before God, what do you want us to do? You know, as couples, you can have time to talk about it, to pray about it. If you're ready to give today, we'll talk about how to do that. But it may be you just want to drop an IOU in, or you want to take time to pray and give it later this week. But please follow through on that. Don't just do that and then not follow through on your commitment before God to consider it. But to actually consider, God, what would you have us give that's sacrificial and joyful in this moment? And it may be different than you expected. And for you feeling, and for those of you that are feeling this sense of God, yes, I want to, give myself to the things they're talking about. I think it starts here. It starts with the giving financially into these things and moves on to giving in other ways. And so there are 3 ways to give. You can give by cash or check. There is an envelope in front of many of these seats. If you see it sticking out that says One Church Ministries. If you want to give by cash or check, just grab that envelope. And there will be baskets by the doors on the way out at various places, I think by most all the doors, that you can give into. Baskets labeled OCM. I think there may even be one up in the balcony as well. So you can just drop a check or a cash in there. Second way you can give is online through the OCM website. So we have an OCM website, not the Living Light website, but the OCM website. You can go on there. You can also give through the Living Light app as well, okay? But one quick thing about that, if you're giving through the OCM or through the Living Light app, and you need to realize that your giving to OCM is different than your giving to Living Light. So you make sure to select One Church Ministries option in the app. And if you're giving that way and you've never given to One Church Ministries, you have to reset it up through Subsplash because every account is linked to the specific charity, if that makes sense. So even though you've given to Living Light, you have to set it up anew for OCM. You need to select OCM and set up a new account. So if you're like, wait, I've done this. Yeah, you got to do it one more time to be able to link it to One Church Ministries. And in the future, you can always pick which one and give to either one. So you can give any of those 3 ways. All right, one last thing. We've had some people working with the kids today, which is fantastic. We want to say thank you to all the kids workers who have worked. But in particular, if you see these people, I want you to give them a big thanks because they've worked the entire morning. Meaning they chose so you could be in all these sessions and your kids could be back there to stay back for all the hours, except for worship, to do that. And a lot of these guys would have wanted to be in here to hear what's being said, but they said, we'll listen to it later. So I'm just going to name their names. Please thank them when you see them. Keith and Bree Johnson, Kayla Dano, Josh Robinson, Michael Whipple, and Hannah Cooper. They've kind of been lead teachers back there and stayed back there the whole morning as other people cycled in and out. So please say thank you to them. All right, so we're done with this part. We're all going to get our kids and move outside to have lunch together. All right.